Among GEM's tools that allow you to clean up and basically make corrections in your data, we have something called the Outlier correction tool. So if I click on this hybrid raw data set, you'll see your preview. At that point, you're ready to go ahead and click on your Outlier correction tool. The action happens below the tool. So you're given a set of columns. These are the column names within your file, and each one could be acted upon. It'll look at the various data values within each column and determine, one, whether or not that data is normally distributed. If it is, for example, let's look at ear height. That one is determined to be normally distributed, so it automatically just gave a global box plot and shows you your outlier values. At this point, you can take those outlier values. You could do corrections, imputation, if you wished. For example, replace with just NANs if you felt that those outliers were way outside the limits and you didn't want to make any guesses what they would be. Otherwise, you could replace with medians, means, and so on as different choices. For example, median is what we could place those with. One thing I should note is that we're not actually going to alter your values without making a note in your metadata. So the metadata will mark very clearly which values were changed, what their original values were. So you're not losing any information, but at least you can make those changes. And going back, you can basically go home to your previous one, or you noticed you could have gone to the previous variable or the second variable. And I'll show you what happens when the data is not normally distributed. For example, if we're looking at days after planting, and we select that for corrections. What happens is this one determines that it actually needs a sorting variable, that this one is not normally distributed, so we need to have a rolling median or rolling mean, or looking at what's happening along the way. So the best thing for this variable is it should track really well the silk days after planting. Those are fairly correlated very well with each other, and it'll try to find outliers with the two variables relative to each other. And indeed, when we observe this data, what we see is this is the main general curve. As we increase silk days after planting and pollen on this axis, they're generally correlated with each other with some deviations. Here's kind of an upper bound and a lower bound on those limits, and there's one data point for which it's grossly out of line, this particular data point here. And these happen to be missing values, which you could, if there was a checkbox earlier on, we could have shown missing values and corrected missing values. This particular data point and the missing values are items we could impute and kind of fix. For example, we could impute with just NAN and basically not correct the values, or we could use a rolling median or a rolling mean, or any of these other methods of interpolation. So let's go ahead and do a rolling mean. For example, in this one, if we selected this particular value, 56, this is the outlier, would place it right along with the other data points where it would be expected. Note that we're not actually changing data per se without actually making a clear note. In the metadata, there will be a mark that says that this value has been imputed and replaced, but that will allow you to go on with other calculations that might require values at all points.